Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Playtime! Thank you very much. There's a long history in this city of jazz musicians and traditional musicians and folk musicians hanging out, getting drunk, staying up all night, various romantic liaisons, and a lot of collaborative music making over many years. And through that process has grown a tremendous respect between the Scottish jazz community and the Scottish traditional music community. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say. And at the very beginning, the Jazzies didn't like the folkies because we had a bunch of gigs in pubs. This is like in the 90s, early 90s. Big John was there. We had a bunch of gigs in pubs, and then we'd get our gigs nicked by the folkies because they would just need to have 2 people get paid. They would have a session. And it was actually, to be fair, it was much better music and more fun. But it was also cheaper. And so for a while we were going, who the fuck are these folkies playing all this diddly music with, you know? And then we actually went along and listened to them play. It was like, holy shit, this is great. This music is amazing, and these musicians are amazing. So then a lot of the, like Tommy Smith and John Ray and Colin Steele and Phil, my brother, and Kevin McCain's, we all started, and Gina Ray and Sylvia, we all started learning traditional instruments and playing together. And sometimes in Big John's flat. And so anyway, move forward 40 years, and here we are blessed with the beautiful, wonderful talent of Ross Ainslie, ladies and gentlemen. And Ross is one of the true life forces of the Scottish music scene, and we're delighted to have him here. We need to kind of, I guess, say at the outset that this could be more rehearsed. So if you think about it like a sort of laboratory of music, there may be some false starts. There may be some extended discussions between tunes. There may be some complete car crashes. We are launching ourselves into an unknown space. But we're doing it with joy in our hearts and clean underwear. Ross, do you want to say something?
Well, there's nothing like being in the wrong place.
At the right time.
Now we had a wee rehearsal there, but I've kind of trying to gather some tunes that I thought would be good with this band, but they've worked, kind of. We'll see how it goes. But we're no, it's a pleasure to play with these guys. It's kind of I'm very much out my depth tonight, so yeah, we'll see how it goes. But I thought we'd start with a set on the pipes just to get going. These pipes, I don't know if are you mostly jazzers here? Anyone know any of the folkies? Some, yeah.
Folk as well.
Yeah, folk. So there's a guy called Gordon Duncan, who's a piper from Pitlochry, and he was my teacher. So I spent a lot of time with Gordon, and these pipes are actually Gordon's, and they're like probably about 200 years old. Proper antiques. They're probably the most iconic set of pipes in the world because Gordon played them, but also they are really a great instrument. And Martin's away.
Put a crash arm on.
But these, yeah, so Gordon died 20 years ago today. Same with Martin Bennett, he died 20 years ago as well. Both my kind of main inspirations. But I did a recital on these pipes last year, and the family said I could be the custodian of these pipes. So it's an honour to play these. You know, great.
All right.
So we'll give a few tunes, and the boys will
Give us a look when you want us to
I'll give you a look. Do it, right?
come in. Duncan's pipes. That's really special, mate.
Yeah, special.
Yeah.
A slow one.
Yeah.
Let's try Angelina. So this is a tune. Do you know a guitarist called Tommy Emmanuel? Great acoustic guitar player.
Yeah.
Australian. Graeme, I'd say he's probably the best acoustic guitar player.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
This is a tune he wrote called Angelina. I think it's for his daughter. We'll give that a bash. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Graeme, you ought to try Caribé.
Yeah.
Tom?
Yeah. I'll just jam it.
Aye, it's all in the same key. Okay, we'll try this one. This is a piece by Martin Bennett. Do you know Martin Bennett? You must have heard.
Aye.
Yeah. So he did this piece. We play it with the Grit Orchestra. Tom and Mario were in the band. This is there was actually a version of this on a TV. It must have been a Gaelic TV show called Taxi. You ever see that?
I've seen it.
And Tommy Smith's playing the sax along with it. So it's a shame you've not got a part.
I can forget about it. It was in the Dropbox, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, my phone. Give me a minute.
So this is our first run through. It's kind of C minor.
In time.
No.
tell the Martin Bennett story?
Yeah.
So, first time I met Martin Bennett was after a Sutherland gig, which was a band that Jim Sutherland got together with a bunch of jazzers, and James McIntosh was in it, and Simon Toomey was in it. So we'd done a gig, and Martin came to the gig, and then we went to this party on sort of South Bridge, it was a tenement, like kind of a flat with flats above it and flats below it. And Martin came up to me and said, you know, he liked my drumming and all that sort of stuff. And then we were at the party, and up until that point, my only experience with Highland pipes was these guys used to play them outside my house on a Saturday morning when I was trying to sleep, and I found them really annoying. And I was sitting with this fiddler called Simon Bradley, who, from Manchester, I think it's from Manchester, and I said, I'm not sure about the Highland pipes, I've never really had a good experience with them. And he went, oh, just imagine you're going into battle, and this was the opposition, and you heard them. Can't do his accent at all. Imagine this is the opposition music that you heard in battle. And it was, at this point, it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and we were in this flat, and it had flats above and flats below. So Martin got his Highland pipes out in this room, in this party, and started playing absolutely full on
war music.
Aye. And it was just the most incredible introduction, you know.
Yeah.
And
it would be scary if you saw 400 pipers coming over the hill, you know?
Yeah,
I think.
or just even one. But yeah, so like, yeah.
Now Martin was brilliant.
Yeah.
Legend.
The
Guys,
flats wake up. The people that
Nothing.
fly.
Nobody called the police, as far as I know. We just made a big noise, and I think in Scotland.
You had it south of the border.
Yeah, I think you can get away with it in Scotland because everyone loves the pipe, so it kind of gives them a good feeling, even if it's 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Guys, what do you want to do next?
Making music.
Do you want to do making music? Okay, this is a track. Again, this is our first rehearsal. But this is a tune called Making Music, which is, over the years I've spent a lot of time in India with a couple of guys that Tom knows as well. And it was a man called Nigel Richards who put it together, who was a pipe maker. Some of you might know Nigel. He was kind of around the folk scene a lot from the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like real kind of...
He did John Renbourn interpretations of his songs.
Yeah, he was brilliant fingerstyle guitarist. And did you know Nigel well?
I knew him really well.
Great guy.
We used to play a lot together.
Yeah, like so he started a band called India Alba, and it was a kind of Scottish and Indian mix. And I think Fraser Fifield actually played first. He was the first guy in the band, and Fraser left, so Nigel invited me. I was playing Nigel's pipes at the time and spending a lot of time up in Dunkeld. We had a session going in Dunkeld. So and it was probably some of my favourite trips of music were with Nigel in Delhi. They were like Nigel was probably 30 years older than me, but it was like going away with my brother, you know. He was so much fun, and like the energy he had for his age was kind of amazing. And yeah, we used to go, and it was, I don't drink anymore, but and Nigel didn't drink, but we both did back then, and what a time we had. And Tom came over one time, I think it was Tom's first trip to India, and he arrived really early in the morning. Me and Nigel were already there. But it was they were celebrating Holi. It was Holi Fest, so that's the way they go around and they just throw colours at you, everyone in the street. So Tom had arrived.
It's like arriving for your first day in Scotland on New Year's Eve. It was like that.
But it was like Tom had taken an acid tab on the flight, and it just kicked in as he arrived. We went to there was a festival there. It was kind of for the alternative kind of renegades of Delhi called Holy Cow Festival. And so we went there, and there's a drink called Bang that they have over there, and it's kind of like it's legal on the one day of Holi, then it's not, then it's illegal after that. But it's basically it's like a hash drink, so everyone's completely away with it, and like throwing colours and like going mental. But we were we were next to this swimming pool, and I was like just at the edge, and this like guy was crazed. I remember he pushed me, and like you were saying, I was really close to like cracking the skull.
There was a few people from the neighbouring village that kind of snuck in and were trying to undermine this festival. This guy just pushed Ross for really violently for no reason into this pool, and his head missed the stone edge by like, it was really scary. And he tried to push me in, but didn't get a lot of purchase. But it was, and I was like, what the fuck are you doing? You know, it was really, because it went from being the most beautiful vibe I'd ever seen in the world to being quite scary.
Nasty,
all of a sudden, you know.
It was a great day.
A great day.
It was a great day.
Yeah, beautiful day. Apart from that.
Why was I talking about that?
Nigel.
Nigel. Yeah. So then over the years, been with Nigel, and kind of Nigel had the guys were called Sharat and Gyan, who were the Indian musicians, a fiddle player and a tabla player. We'll play a tune for them later. But we used to go. I mean, we used to go at least once a year, if not twice, for 10 years straight. And David and the boys would come over. So I was soaking up all this Indian music all the time. And Sharat would have friends over every night. There was always sessions. I didn't have a clue about Indian music before, but then just over the years, I love it. I think it's what Nigel was saying. It's quite linked to Scottish, especially pipes, because of the drone. In India, they have a Tampura drone which they play along. So it's kind of similar kind of things. And but I was just dipping my toe in. But there was a track we always used to listen to. It was by Zakir Hussain called "Making Music." I don't know if you ever heard it. It's one of Zakir's first solo albums he did, and it was the kind of title track. And it's a beautiful wee melody, really simple, but we'll give it a shot for you, see how we get on. We shouldn't fuck this one up. You get a wee drone going.
that to Nigel Richard, that's
yeah,
it.
yeah.
But it could feel Nigel. Yeah. Let's go, Ross Ainslie! So, we're going to take a break for 15 minutes exactly. And if you don't come back for 50 minutes, we're not going to play the second set. You're not all sitting down.
Promises, promises.
And when I say 15 minutes, I mean between 15 and 25 minutes. And but we've got loads more to come, because actually now I'm feeling like we might be even over rehearsed. But let's hear it for Martin Kershaw on saxophone. Graeme Stephen on the guitar. Mario Lima Caribé de Rocha on the bass. My name's Tom Bancroft on the drums. Thank you. And one more time for the amazing, the wonderful Ross Ainslie. So we'll see you in between 15 and 25 minutes. Ross Ainslie, welcome to Playtime Interval Interview. How did the first half go?
Oh, this is the interval.
Yeah.
Can I go home now?
No, you've got another set to do. You did well, but you've got more to prove.
Oh, right, okay.
How was it for you?
No, yeah, it was. I think it went pretty well. It took a while to kind of work out if it was okay. Especially with the arrangement, cause the folky kind of thing. It's basically tunes, and you can kind of go, okay, well, we're going to play a tune. We'll play it by shouting again, or
yeah,
you know, it's quite easy to kind of navigate. Even a group like that, if it was all focus, you can kind of navigate an arrangement as you go.
Yeah.
But then I was kind of thinking that actually Martin was taking a solo, and after, so he kind of pointed at his head to go it's obviously back to the head.
Yeah.
Which I don't really know what that means, but I kind of thought, okay, it's back to start. But for me, back to start is go to the A part. But I think everyone else's head is go back to the intro.
I think it depends, but yes, it's like if two people living in a flat, they have different standards of cleanliness, and one person's always going to go, oh, I think it's fine. I think the flat's fine, and the other one's going, this flat is really filthy. But
yeah, if you've got a female living with you, then it's. Remember Nigel's levels of cleanliness.
Nigel's house was amazing. Yeah,
you needed a shower when you left.
Yeah, it was coated with black dust because he was making bagpipes every day. But I mean, I think we used to pulling together gigs really fast, and we're used to them not being perfect, and we're used to them being then live streamed. And so
yeah, it's a stressful environment.
Yeah, but I think there's something about there's a sort of pure music making thing at the center of it, and it was great that you were willing to take that jump into that kind of, you said at the beginning you're not in your comfort zone, where you said you're out your depth zone. I don't think that at all. I think you were absolutely incredible, but I think the amount of, we're quite used to going into situations with not a lot of certainty about what's going to happen, and we'll kind of work it out, and then also improvising things that just it's actually, when you're improvising, it's quite good to not know what's going to happen, because you're going to fill that space with something.
Yeah.
So but the thing that you said earlier about when you're with folk is you have a language and you can shout at each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a sort of language thing. So for me, fundamentally, there was a lot of really cool music making happening, and definitely not perfect. And the recording's mental, because especially when the Highland pipes are out, it's sort of
I know it's impossible, especially in that environment when you. But no,
So
I think that in general, I think it's good for me to be in these scenarios because it's I need to be more comfortable in improvising, you know, because it's always a thing I've just kind of put my wee toe in over the years. And
well, I was wanting to talk to you about this because when we talked on the phone before the gig, and I mean, you know, we whoever's watching this, we've known each other for a long time, but we've played together quite a few times, but not huge amounts, you know, not extended projects and things.
Yeah.
And I remember playing in India with you. Remember that in Sharat's house with that whistle player, and and I remember you saying before the gig, you said you had some self-deprecating expression for improvising, like I'm going to flap my fingers or something like that.
No, I said I'll flap my fingers for you.
Yeah, I'll flap my fingers for you, and I was going, oh, okay. But you took a solo in Angelina and in the Zakir Hussain tune, and I don't want to give away the plot, but you do some improvising in the second set. Despite the fact that it's not happened yet, I'm able to see into the future, and I can tell you that you do, and it's fantastic. So
I think is the thing that I struggle with is because I've not got the chops. I don't practice my, you know, getting around in that way.
Right.
I'll practice melodies that I've made up, but I won't practice just navigating around just the certain notes, runs, you know,
right,
bluesy runs. I don't practice them.
Yeah.
So when I'm trying to do that kind of stuff, I just feel like a fake, and it's rubbish, you know, or it's just like, nonsense.
Yeah, but
I'm not feeling the, like, you know, when Graeme or Martin's playing, it's like this effortless fluency that, like, I don't have. I'll get stuck, and I'll be like, and I'll just have to. So, you know, but that's my fault, because I need to actually work. I need to work on it. If I want to get better, I'll have to work at it. But I just.
What I was trying to say is that I think the illusion is that jazz musicians don't feel that way and are always feeling in control. And my brother has this expression of, he describes it that when he was younger, he felt that improvising was like this wild beast, and he didn't understand it. And he thought that by studying he would. There's sort of this wild beast of being in this out of control, not knowing what's going on, feeling a fake, and sort of just kind of trying to keep up with everything that's going on. And he thought that by studying and learning more, the wild beast would get smaller. And it's the opposite; it's got bigger.
All right. Because your options become bigger when your navigation is.
Well, I think that, I mean, it's funny we're talking about this, because I've been writing about this in my PhD. But I said earlier, by the way, that Mario and Graeme weren't intelligent. That was a joke, because Graeme's just got a PhD, so
yeah.
And Mario's very intelligent. But the bit about it is that I think the amount of bandwidth you've got in your conscious mind to understand what's going on when you're improvising is quite limited. And it doesn't matter how developed an improviser you are, it's still quite limited. So what develops is a language that you can talk in without. So when we're talking, we're not actually thinking about what we're saying. We just talk, and we don't have to think about it. We just do it. And I think music's like that. And you've got a very developed language as a traditional musician. And I can imagine that emotionally it feels crazy and like you don't know what you're doing, but you're still talking. And I thought you were very articulate. You looked very articulate and in control of what you were doing, especially on the pipes. It's like, wow, you know.
Yeah. I think it'd probably be, the pipes are difficult for the improvising because, you know, say on the whistle, if you kind of get stuck, you can just stop, you know, and have a break.
That's great. You can't stop with the
when you stop the pipes, it's very obvious that you've gone off, you know.
Right, you've got to keep going no matter what.
You have to, you know.
Yeah. That's
or you
great.
have to hold a note, but it's like you're you know, it's there's no hiding.
Can't you just drone for a while?
Well, you could, but then that's not the game, you know. You have to be on.
See that piece you did right at the beginning. You talked about Gordon Duncan and the pipes. You played this solo piece. Was any of that improvised, or was that all?
No, I wrote that. It's it starts off with a kind of Pibroch theme and just develops. It's a rhythmical thing, but it kind of works better with chords, to be honest, because it's basically like a synth line.
Aye,
Somebody
yeah,
put
Rick Wakeman in there.
Yeah, that's all it is really.
But did you, when you write things like that, do you improvise when you're writing?
I suppose I am improvising as I'm writing, yeah. But but it's very, very structured because I'm trying to write a proper I'm trying to write a melody. I'm not trying to deviate too much. So it's
proper in there as opposed to jazz, which is just.
So that's you can cut that out. No, you can overdub like AI.
You know. I'm trying to write proper music, not like.
You know.
But no, I mean, if you're writing like that, do you like record it, or is it on paper, or what's it? And are you catching it in your head? How are you doing it?
Well, let me try to explain this proper thing.
Oh, listen, don't worry about that. It's fine. I
No,
know.
but yeah, it's just like because for me, for improvising, it doesn't sound tuneful to me.
Right.
So when I'm saying I was like, okay, I'm trying to be improvising, trying to write a tune, but I'll be thinking more melodic rather than. No, I'm getting down a deep hole here. You know what I mean?
I think I do, yeah.
Like I don't know, like see for like when you're improvising as a jazzer, are you trying to write tunes on the spot, or are you just what's the thought process of it?
Well, I mean, there's going to be people going, "Oh, he's a drummer. He doesn't know the answer to this." But to anybody that's thinking that right now, fuck off. Fuck off. I think there's quite an interesting spectrum of understanding of what jazz musicians are thinking when they're improvising, and some of them are not thinking anything at all. There was an interesting paper recently with this Norwegian guy, and he interviewed a whole bunch of jazz musicians, and some of them were saying, one guy said, when it's going well, I feel like God is talking through me. And so I think there's this thing where you can almost feel like you're watching yourself playing and you're not actually deciding.
So you're like on autopilot kind of thing. It's like
kind of, yeah. But it is quite similar to talking in the sense that as we're talking now, we're so inside the conversation, we're not really thinking about words we're choosing or grammar or anything like that. We're just in a flow of exchanging. And so I think
what about this then is to be a good jazz musician, is it basically like having heavy artillery, kind of having lots of like what's the word? Having lots of
ammunition
that you can pick from.
It's like having a vocabulary, like language. But at the same time, I'm not particularly. I think it's much more interesting. Someone like yourself improvising, coming from a traditional background. I love it when I think you do it really, really well, and I think you're not a jazz musician, and I don't think you should feel like you should be like a jazz musician. I don't actually think that's that interesting. I think what's interesting is musicians from different traditions improvising together, because improvising is not just a jazz thing.
Yeah.
You know, and it's fundamentally making music in real time, and you can think about it as composing. But I think it's qualitatively different from in the same way that we're not writing a play right now.
Yeah,
you know, we're not writing a play; we're having a conversation, and I think it's much more like that. You're in the present and you're exchanging information. You're kind of interacting and you're immersed in an experience. Information's being thrown back and forward. We could write a play that's this and try and capture, but if we wrote a play that's like this, we'd be trying to capture the informality of it and the fact that it's a conversation.
Do you know what I like the most of when you hear a jazz musician soloing is they seem to find notes that don't exist. That I don't, you know, it's like I can't get that note. Why can I not get that note? and why can I not get that one? It's like the in betweens
Right.
that going in between different. Maybe it's like it's a wee hint to whatever the sus of the chord is, or something like that, or it's the knowledge that I would like to know is the knowledge of the scales and what's possible, and also like obviously jazz musicians' ears are amazing because they can, it's like hinting at these wee things. That's what I think is the most impressive about it. It's like knowing, and also, if you're soloing, you're also having to go, like you're getting the chord changes. When I'm trying to solo, I'm just thinking, I don't even know what's going around me. I'm like, spend most of my 90% of my concentration on just trying to like be fluent,
right,
and not like slip up on a note or something.
Yeah, I don't have to deal with chord sequence. I don't have to deal with chords. I do when I'm composing music, but so I don't want to be a fake jazz expert, but I do think that to be that kind of jazz musician over chords it takes a long time to learn that.
Yeah, it's very impressive. Like I'm seeing, like
it takes a long time to learn to play the pipes, like the way you play the pipes.
Yeah, sure. I know it's a learning thing, but it's just it's a level up, It's like I know when I've been playing with Paul Townsend quite a lot recently, and it's like the wee snaky notes that you can put in that just like.
What do you think of his whistle?
I just
What do you think of Paul's whistle playing?
Good.
Is he playing with you as well on the whistle?
Yeah, no, well that's like we like I played on one of Paul's pieces called "Deepening the River."
Yeah, I saw it. I came to see the gig. It was great.
Then after that, like Paul had just every so often I would go over and he's learned like another 50 tunes or something, like he's went really deep dive into it.
Yeah.
And he was like, the thing is with Paul is he wants to know that like properly how it works,
Yeah.
He was wanting to learn all the kind of like finger grace notes and stuff, but which I basically I'm doing pipe fingering. So it's quite it's quite hard if you're not a piper. It's making your fingers do stuff that are weird,
Yeah.
Because sax is kind of on, you're not really.
Sax is the easiest instrument to play. You blow in one end, and you press buttons down.
Yeah.
It's like a melodica, basically.
But he got this whistle called the Chameleon, which is a guy called Misha Somerville, who's a good pal. I've known him for years. He's playing Crop number 5.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So he makes MK whistles, and he'd always, for years, he's been trying to design a whistle with keys, and he eventually got this one. And I had said to him, or I can't remember if I said to Misha or Paul, but you said you really need to get that because you'll be the perfect guy. Because for a whistle player, you're not used to having to put your fingers on keys, and it's more your finger work, that does all that, So Paul's really nailed it. And he started to do like make scales and practice things for that specific whistle. It's cool,
Yeah, no, he's wonderful. He's a wonderful musician and human being. I've been playing a lot with Fraser Fifield, who improvises really well as well.
Yeah, no, Fraser's got with his whistles, he's got some thumb holes on the back, so he can get like notes that I can't get. So maybe that's where that's why I'm not getting these notes that I want to be playing when I hear the sax and all that. It's also the knowledge of what one's work,
right?
But I like that. That's the way it's the bluesy stuff that you can kind of that just kind of links things together. I think it's really cool.
Well, it sounds to me like you're hanging around with the right people if you want to absorb it. But I have to say, I thought your improvisations were great on the Playtime gig. And,
thanks, man.
And you certainly were not just flapping your fingers. So, and hats off thanks a lot for having the courage to throw yourself into it. And
no, not at all.
And the audience absolutely loved it. They absolutely.
I'd like another shot and be a bit more prepared.
Absolutely, of course. Okay, well, we'll get you back. It's like Tyson Fury against
the rematch.
The Ukrainian dude. You want another go?
Usyk, I want another 20 million.
Right, okay. So, because you gave us it was 2-1 on the Sharat and Gyan tune.
Yeah.
But overall, what was the score?
I think it turned out quite good for how much stuff's in it. It was
yeah. I mean, I was listening to it when I was mixing it, and I definitely made a mistake on one of that 5/4 bar, but there was some other people making mistakes as well. And I'm not naming any names, but they begin with G and M. Marty was just
amazing reader. I mean, incredible reader. But no, it's yeah. I mean, Martin was the only guy I've not really met before.
Okay.
So yeah, like it's impressive that, you know, just like putting the
incredible reader. Yeah, Graeme's very good. Graeme's
yeah, because I've actually played a few things with Graeme before, and I remember it was the same situation. Like, there's the dots, and it just like rattles it out, you know.
Yeah. Well, listen. Thank you so much for giving up your time, and thank you for the gig. And what you hoping to happen in the second set? What's your plan?
Second set, we're going to do a cool thing, I think, which was your idea, to do a kind of, I play some jigs,
yeah,
and we'll go around the band, and they're going to respond,
yeah,
to what's going on.
Yeah.
So I think that was a good one. I think that's going to be good.
Yeah, well, I've got a feeling that's going to be good. Yeah, me
too.
And I've got a tingle about it.
Nice idea.
Yeah. So, well, Ross Ainslie.
And I'm also looking forward to a kebab.
Oh, really?
After the gig, yeah.
You thinking you're going to get kebab?
I think I might get a kebab, and I think you might have some hummus. I just got a feeling that you're needing some hummus.
Yeah, I like hummus. Yeah,
you might get half of it on your top.
I don't know if that needed to be. Well, it hasn't happened yet, so now I've been warned.
No, it's just I had a kind of wee image of it, you know, happening.
Do you think I should wear a bib? Generally speaking,
probably help. Yeah.
I'm a granddad now, so I can get hold of bibs quite easily. All right, man.
All right, cheers, Tom.
I'm talking to you, man, and
thanks,
good luck in second set.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Playtime, set 2. I'm starting talking when Mario's not here yet, but I thought I would just tell you a couple of things. So, one of the really interesting things about the difference between jazz musicians and traditional musicians, there's many differences in the way we make music. Our model of music making is almost completely different. And in some respects, if you're playing with Indian musicians, Scottish jazz musicians have more in common with Indian classical musicians than Scottish traditional musicians or Scottish classical musicians. And one of the differences is notation, the use of notation. So a lot of traditional musicians, it's fair to say, are not particularly strong readers, don't learn from notated music, they learn by ear, which is kind of in a way a better way to learn.
Yeah.
Whereas jazz musicians, we play a lot by ear, but most of us can read pretty well. Marty can read anything, literally anything. He's like the guy in Anchorman. You put anything on the auto cue, he'll say it. He's one of the best readers of music that I've ever. That's true, Graeme, isn't it?
Oh, I know.
Marty's absolutely
second best.
No, he's way better than you.
After Mozart.
He's incredible. He's incredibly good at it.
No, he is. He's amazing. Yeah, he's amazing. Yeah.
So this tune that we're going to start with,
he even reads stuff that you didn't mean to put there. You know what I mean?
It's a really good example of a traditional musician bringing in something. It's pretty complicated. It's pretty complicated in terms of like lots of different time signature changes and stuff like that. But we've all got our music, and we're going to have a go at playing it with a sort of fairly minor amount of rehearsal. Now, if we pull this off, it's going to be a big win for jazz.
Oh, yeah.
Big win. We might not, but we're going to give it a go. If we get a bass player to play it. But do you want to tell us a bit about this tune and
Look from area.
what?
So I go and look from area.
Maybe.
I'll go look upstairs.
It's on his phone.
I spent
I think he's buying car insurance.
car
again.
insurance.
Yeah, that's right. That's weird. He did that in the rehearsal.
He's trying to get that up and down by.
His phone rang and everyone was playing. It was a bigger band, and his phone rang and he answered it. Stopped playing and answered it, and everyone was going over here and he was going, "No, sorry, I had to buy some car insurance."
Now this tune is, I was telling you about the India trips, and Sharat and Gyan, that's my bandmates from India Alba. So Sharat Shrivastava, he's the violinist, great Indian classical violinist, and Gyan Singh is the tabla player. So yeah, I've not seen the guys for a while. They're actually coming over, Tom, I didn't tell you, in
Well,
January.
Gyan, I don't know if anybody saw my brother's gig, the beautiful with Graeme. Gyan is the tabla player in that band that played with Ross. It's the same tabla player, and he was also in one of my bands in common as well. So
Yeah, so they're coming over in January. We're going to do an India Alba kind of, what, did it be 30 year?
Celtic.
Celtic, yeah. Tom, you'll be in that, I'm sure.
I'd love to be in it. Yeah.
Graham will be in it,
Oh,
I'm sure.
count me in.
You just booked us up for a gig, right?
What's a day? What's a day?
And it's
I think I might
folk-bound.
be,
It's folk-bound.
I'm kind of
The
busy
Celtic
January.
pound, man. That's what you want. That's the whole. That's the whole.
So yeah, so this is Sharat and Gyans. We do a wee intro.
Oh yeah. What's the sort of thing?
Thank you.
everyone reading that. That's amazing.
I've done a lot of gigs with indie musicians where at the end of the gig or end of the tune, you played quite a hard tune and it's like the score is India 7, Scotland 0. Because you've just completely been blown out of the water. But I think that one it was
2-1, 2-1.
2 Scotland. What do you say, 1?
1
Okay. You still got
No.
Who was it that lost us the second goal?
Yourself.
Oh. Okay, I'm going to sharp now.
Got to do Shalaka.
Yeah.
Manu, do you know the story of this?
Yeah, well, this tune that we're going to play was introduced by a friend of Greg's, a fiddle player called Lev Atlas, and he used to play in a wedding band in Russia, and got out of Russia by playing in these Jewish weddings, and then one of the tunes that he came across was that, which is very fast, and Greg tells a very long, funny joke about people dying when they were dancing this tune, and it's called Shalachol, and it's a very kind of powerful tune that it's very well known, and
How do they die?
Apparently it's like it's such a fast tune that they actually keep playing and playing and playing and go gets faster and faster, and some people that are in weddings and have maybe more fragile hearts and health conditions end up exerting themselves so much that they end up popping for too much of effort.
It could happen tonight, quite easy.
Yeah, so Greg always tells this joke that you can actually, instead of dancing, you can squeeze your buttocks and as you're sitting down, and it will be excellent pelvic floor exercises, and you will survive the tune.
Okay. That took a turn for the unexpected.
Yeah. Do you do this slow introduction? And then
I think maybe Martin would be a good one for this. You can come in there.
harmonic.
Harmonic.
Yeah, harmonic.
The harmonic. Harmonic, so.
last one was called
Shalaka.
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 Yeah. So the concept of this one is that Ross and I are going to play a jig, and then at the end of the jig, I'm going to carry on playing the baran, and then the first time around it's going to be Graeme. He's going to improvise in response to the jig, and then through a certain kind of communication, maybe by a glance or a coquettish little side eye, Graeme will indicate that he said what he wants to say.
Yeah.
Then Ross is going to play a second jig. Could be a slip jig if you want to go that way. And then Marty's going to respond to the jig with his massive musical soul. And
I'm sure you're going to say that.
I'm talking so much shit. But this is the concept. These guys don't know this, so I'm just explaining to them as well. And then with a certain glance, or just a nod of the head, or just a twitch of the finger, he's going to indicate to Ross that he said all he has to say, and then Ross is going to play a third jig.
So we should play together then. What key do you want to play?
And then Mario's going to respond to the third jig, and then after that, I don't know what's going to happen. The creator will decide.
Exciting.
Well, we'll finish with something on E.
A. Okay.
Do you want to start?
Okay. Maybe one more?
One more in the pipes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's been a while since you got them out.
I think we should do a set for Gordon.
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
What was your name? Sorry.
Nikki.
Nikki. This is for especially for Nikki. This is we'll play a few tunes.
Aye.
We'll keep it in B flat, kind of modal-ish, and then the last one E flat. One of Gordon's most famous tunes was called "Press for Time." So we'll try that, and along with some others. Yeah.
Yeah. everybody doing Joni Mitchell music. It's going to be amazing. But can it top that? I don't know. But thanks very much. One more time for Ross Ainslie.